So from the color, you see, the hue tells you the amount of iron. If your value in chroma, if it's up here, tells you it's a waterlogged soil or very, very low in iron, depending on whether you're on a hill or on a flat land. Here we will tell you whether it is rich in organic matter. Now we said that in tropical soil, weathering is so intensive that you have nothing left. All the nutrients are in this layer. But when you plant oil palm, you bulldoze the area. Very often this is removed from jungle, and you plant your oil palm on this type of material. Now this is built up over time. So all your fertility of your soil is actually in this layer. And that is what you are interested in. But for me as a classification, I cannot classify the soil using this because it can change rapidly. Today this is the surface, tomorrow one erosion or bulldozer come through this one become the surface. So we classify the soil using subsoil characteristics. Okay. Okay, so we have done color. Next to do is structure. To do structure, I take a big piece of soil like this. Okay, you just press slightly. You've got to break it into natural pad. Okay. Okay, something like this. So like this is called subangular blocky because they are not pointed. Some soils will be very pointed, especially the silt content is high. So if you have this, then you say subangular blocky, then you can say fine, medium or coarse, whether they are small size, big size. The smaller the size, the better your porosity. Water can percolate into your soil. Okay, I forgot about texture, sorry. Okay, so for each layer also, we have to rub and determine the percentage of clay, silt and sand. And then plot on a triangular diagram. So you need to learn how to determine the texture. Don't read the textbook which you find from Europe. They say if you can make a ring, your percentage of clay is more than 35% and so forth. It does not work with our soils because our mineralogy is mostly kaolinite. Theirs is mostly elite or montmorillonite. So you have to learn. You get this soil, send to the lab, you do the texture, then you know this type of feeling means less than 35% clay. For me, this one is 18 to 35% clay. So it's a fine sandy clay loam. Afterwards, you look at your data. Okay, so you have to determine the color, the texture, structure. And then consistent is the same. If I just press, you see it breaks. Friable. Easy to break. Some soils very hard to break. What is the implication of that? If you want to plant vegetable, you want to rotovate your soil. You want it to be fine. If very big, you plant tapioca, the tapioca cannot become big because very firm the soil. Especially when your silt is high. When you have high silt more than 30%, you will find soil structure very coarse and very firm. So the roots cannot go in. So if your roots cannot go in, the tapioca cannot kembang to become big. You get thin, long tapioca. No good. So you see, your soil property is controlling what sort of crop I'm going to plant. If this is high silt, you don't think of planting tapioca on this type of soil. Because you cannot rotovate, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. Many conditions. Okay? So after that, then you mark out the different horizon by color, etc. And then you can make A horizon, B horizon. If you want to subdivide, you can do for finer things like slightly coarser at depth or slightly more firm with depth, etc. We don't need to split too many hairs. Then we look for clay skin. A bit difficult to see on this soil, but you find a natural phase like this. I'll break one. Okay. This one, because it's a bit yellowish, a bit more difficult to see. This is the color here and the color here is slightly different, slightly darker. Now what is that? That is clay skin, but very patchy here. Well, how do we form the clay skin? from here, when it rains, the soil will be dispersed by the water. So you separate your clay, silt and sand. Clay being light, carried by the water, it goes in suspension, goes along the cracks, along your old root channel, it goes down. Then the rain stops, the soil starts to dry. So when it dry, the clay is actually here, inside the water, beside the pad, because it's the pore. Okay? Now the water is pulled into the pad as the soil dries out. So when it pull, the clay deposit on the top. Just like the ladies putting the perfume or makeup on the face, so you get a coating of clay on the pad. Okay. If you can see very clear, you said clear clay skins or patchy clay skin, you cannot see so clearly. So how much you see, you can also describe. But what is the importance of the clay skin? Clay skin means the clay is moving. What is the particle size here which holds the fertilizer you apply? Clay. So if I put a fertilizer here today, tonight it starts to rain. So some of your clay is holding that fertilizer is going down. Okay? That means your fertilizer is moving, moving, moving. If it continues up to here, the roots are all here. Outside your zone where they can rub your fertilizer. Correct? So very important is the implication of the clay skin itself not so important, but it means that your fertilizer is moving. In a deep soil like this, your clay skin can go down to 1 meter. Don't forget all palm roots here only. This is not a feeder root. Most of your feeder roots are the fine ones which are in the surface. Okay. So the importance of clay skin, why we look for clay skin is to tell you that if you put a fertilizer here, it can move down to 70, 80 centimeter where your roots cannot really take the nutrient. That means the loss of nutrient can be high. So how to manage it? One is split application, one is slow release fertilizer. There are so many ways of overcoming, but today the best way is you apply your fertilizer on the front heap. Because why the front heap? The front heap has a lot of humus. This soil, because here, we'll look at the data after this. Less clay here because the clay is moving down all the time. So this one, instead of say here is 18 to 35% clay, here may be less than 18% clay. Less clay, less chance to hold the nutrient. So if you apply on the front heap, the humus will hold your nutrient. So you're holding longer, the roots can take faster. And you go underneath your front heap because of the moisture content under the root, under the front heap, many of the roots are standing there, ready to take your fertilizer. So you are learning to manage your soil because you know the properties. This soil has a property of leaching many of your nutrients. Very low fertility, low CEC, therefore we cannot put here, must put there. The humus has good CEC, so it can hold the nutrient longer, enough for the plant to take. Okay, now let us look at the data. Right on one. Page
44.
43. Page 43. Okay. Just go through the this as Boris just explained. Actually, our profile is further up. This is on hilly terrain. This is rolling terrain. Okay. Look at the description. Brown, brownish yellow, yellowish brown, 10Y half I. So the iron content very low. Sandy clay loam going down to sandy clay loam, sandy clay loam. Okay. Moderate to strong cross subangular blocky, firm as you go down. Above is diffuse and so forth. Okay, the description you can read for yourself. Then let's go to the analytical data. We start with 13% clay in the surface, increasing to 19. That already shows you that the clay is migrating. It's moving from the surface to the subsurface and then continues to increase up to 23. That means your clay is not stopping here, it's going down some more. That means your fertilizer is doing the same thing, moving with the clay. So your fertilizer is going down to 90 over centimeter, away from your root zone. So you must learn to manage. pH, very typical, we have 4.2 in the subsoil. Maybe they had some lime or something here earlier days. 4.5 in the surface. Look at organic carbon, very low, 0.16. Nitrogen, 0.12. Look at the CN ratio, very low. That means you do not have enough nitrogen or carbon in the soil. Very low CN ratio. Available P also quite low, 14, 11 parts per million. And then total P is about 100. That is not available, but slowly become available. Exchangeable cations in the surface a bit higher, but the rest all virtually nothing. Because of the humid layer, you get a bit more